Thanks for being here, whether you're live or on the replay. This is a very simple webinar aimed at helping folks who are looking to create presenter proposals. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Paul Ramsey. I've been a hypnotist for 20 years. Before I was a hypnotist, I was an English teacher. So I am particularly attuned to the organization of language. And so sometimes this stuff is a way that I can help people out a little bit. So we're going to be talking about how to create effective proposals for whether you're, for any conference that you're applying to really. But, I got the idea when seeing that HypnoThoughts put out their applications for next year. I've presented at I've presented at HypnoThoughts, at Heartland, at NGH Convention. The process generally, right, at its foundational level, they're all the same. You submit a proposal, it gets reviewed, and then it gets chosen, ideally based on its merits. And so I think the key thing here is, how do you communicate the merits of your presentation to the best of your ability so that you seem like a really good option for the person or the committee that is choosing presenters for the next year. And I've seen enough of these, and I've produced enough of these that the trends, the pitfalls which trend, are pretty easily identifiable. So the first thing is, the big tendency, and Scott Sandlin just made a video about this, feedback from HypnoThoughts 2024. The biggest sin, if you will, is people who put in for a presentation, and then when they actually show up and do it, it's really a commercial for whatever program they're trying to sell. Scott's already made it clear on that. If that's where you're thinking you're going to go, don't do that. It doesn't help you nearly as much as you think it will. It doesn't help your reputation within the profession. It doesn't help your leadership stance. Don't do that. There's ways that you can bring value, and organically people are going to gravitate to you when they feel like it's a good match, and they'll want to work with you when the time is right. The offshoot of that, that's a little less conscious, I think, is titles. There's a tendency for people to want to produce titles, because we all care about marketing, that are going to get attention and are going to grab attention and then get people to come and attend. And there is a tendency for the titles to be a little bit misleading, not on purpose, but that's what they end up doing. Stephanie, the way she described it is the title just doesn't match the presentation, because you got a little over focused on trying to be catchy, and you let the catchy title drift away from the core of what you're doing. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through a really simple process for how you can just turn all of that on its ear and get back to really just producing an effective proposal. And it's pretty much a 3-step process. The first thing is, don't worry about title. Don't worry about any of the proposal stuff to start with. Get to basics and determine, what's your why? Why do you even want to present in the first place? Get real clarity on that. And if your why is because I want to train more people, because I want to sell more programs, that's a red flag. There's nothing wrong with wanting to do those things, but doing it, leading with it as a driving motivation for how to submit a proposal is going to be problematic. It's going to take you in a direction you don't want to go. Your why needs to be a little bit more granular than that. From a value perspective, you have an interesting concept that you believe is worth sharing with your professional community. You have a particular skill set that you are willing to share and demonstrate and teach to others. Probably the best example is, think about TED Talks and TEDx Talks. When you apply for a TEDx talk, their catchphrase is ideas worth sharing. If you have an idea worth sharing, that's the thing to communicate in your proposal. So how do you first get clarity on what that idea worth sharing is? And then once you have clarity on it, how do you communicate that effectively? So you start with why. I want to give this presentation because it's important to me to help my colleagues be aware of this, or I want, something like that. Once you get your why, then you go to what, and what is more toward delivery, right? Okay, so now I know why I want to do this presentation. What are the deliverables? And when I go back to my old days as a teacher, and a curriculum developer, what we would do there is the what is actual learning objectives. And at the simplest level, it is really simple. What do you want people to know or be able to do? It's start there. You want them to know and understand a concept. You want them to know and understand some principles. You want them to be aware of content and conceptual delivery that they've never had before. Or you go more towards skills and process and you say, I want to help people know how to do this skill, whether that's doing a better intake or doing a better induction or doing better client assessment. It's some kind of skill-based thing. How do you transmit that skill to other people? Could be a mix of the two. Could be, in order to be able to do this thing, you have to understand this concept first. So I want to deliver this concept. And then once you understand the concept, I want to help you learn this skill. So you're shooting for 3 to 5. Adult learning theory says don't give people more than 5. Really stay more toward 3. 3 to 5 learning objectives that you're going to deliver in your presentation. And they should be clearly articulated. They should not be broad. Learning objectives are not broad, right? Learning objectives are not how to be a better hypnotist, how to be a better entrepreneur, like things that we know we need, but that's too broad, right? Learning objectives should be to understand the concept of polyvagal theory and how it applies to client work. And now you're saying, I'm going to teach you this concept of polyvagal theory. Great, right? And then you could go to master 3 new induction skills that are highly effective for stage hypnotists. And now if I'm a person who's reading the description and I see that learning objective, I know, okay, well, I want to learn inductions, but I don't know if I want to learn them that are really more geared towards stage hypnotists. Maybe this isn't the presentation for me. That kind of clarity really is going to help people decide whether they're going to the right event or not. And that's what we want to do for each other. We don't want people to be in the wrong room with us and resentful that they gave an hour of our time and it was not the right match. We all can win. So what are your deliverables? Why is your foundational motivational purpose for giving your presentation? What is your deliverables? And then you finish with how. What's the best way to deliver what you're sharing with your audience? Sometimes it is appropriate, even today, to stand up at the front of the room and lecture. If you can do that in an engaging and powerful way, do it. Don't apologize to anyone. Sometimes you realize, no, lecturing isn't for me. I want a workshop. I want people to be hands-on. I want them to be really interacting. I want discussion. Maybe I want roundtable. Maybe I want open dialogue. You might even want live demo of skill sets. But that's your final thing is, so you've got your why, you've got your what, and then your how. What's the best way to deliver what you're sharing with your audience? If you write all these things down that I'm asking you about and you flesh them out, then you can take the answers to all of those things and craft them into a meaningful proposal. And the first thing I would do if I were you, and this is what I did with my own proposal, is start with your description, not your title. Lay out everything you just brought to conscious awareness and write a description. And if you want to make it, you want people to attend, right? Of course. So you can have a traditional hook. The first sentence of the first of the description can be like a marketing hook, but not just for the sake of marketing, but to get people to be like, ooh, now you got my attention. So you can craft a hook if you want, but that can be a second revision or a third revision. First, just get everything you answered in those questions into some kind of a format where you go, all right, so here's the deal. I identify a problem that I think my colleagues have. They're struggling with this, again, they're struggling with how to do proper intakes, or they're struggling with how to do marketing that gets more clients on their calendar, or, right? And so first is, I understand that you might have this problem. I have a solution to that problem, which has worked really well for me over the course of my career. And this is what it is. And if you come to this presentation, I'm going to teach you A, B, and C, or as I said in learning objectives, 1, 2, and 3. And those things are going to be the key parts of how you solve this problem. And you work that into a description. And I'll tell you right now, even as a former English teacher, what I do every single time these days is I flesh out stuff like that, and then I take it to ChatGPT and I give it to ChatGPT. And I say, I would like to do a presentation at a hypnosis conference in which I discuss and I lay out all my answers to the questions that I mentioned earlier. I feed it to ChatGPT, that's priming the pump. And I say, could you please write a description for my presenter proposal based on this information? And because it's so friendly, it always goes, that's a great idea. It always says some nice thing like that. And then it writes it out for you. Now, you don't just take that and plug it in, but you just saved yourself 10, 15, 20 minutes of doing your first draft on your own. It did it in 10 seconds. Now you take that and either you do another iteration where you say, please rewrite it again, write a revised version for this thing that I just noticed when you read it, and you're calling more attention to something, or you just take it and you throw it in your Word document editor and you just edit it. You go into editor mode and you edit it and get it where you want it to be, where you feel like it authentically represents you, your voice, what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish. And then you go and you copy and paste it into the application for the conference. Once you have that description the way you want it, I would feed it one more time to ChatGPT and I'd say, here's a description of a presentation that I am going to be giving at a hypnotism conference. Could you please brainstorm a list of possible titles for this presentation? And again, you're priming it. The language model is going to go through, it's going to read all the description points and say, based on what you've said you're really doing, here would be some great titles. It's going to give you 10, 12. It should give you right off. You can do multiple iterations of that. You can go, give me 10 more, give me 10 more. Or you can just take the 10 and say, I love that one. That'd be pretty great. Or you can take the 10 and say, it'll tend to do what a lot of people do with book titles and presentations. It'll do first part of the title, colon, subtitle. You can say, I like that title, but I like the subtitle. And you can take two different ones and mash them together. But again, you're going to do that way faster with ChatGPT than you're going to do on your own. So it's going to save you a bunch of time. You're still going to get what you want. And it's all based on you developing that process. All right, so I've talked enough now for a good 15 minutes. Questions about anything that I said?
I like everything you said, Paul.
You like it? Make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And then especially using AI to help you. Is ChatGPT your favorite model versus like
for language
Claude?
stuff, hands down, yeah.
What about like Claude IO?
I have never even touched Claude, but I've talked with people that have used Claude and like, it's cool, but I think that what happens is this has been this way my whole career, right? As more and more social media platforms come out, as more and more of everything keep coming out in the digital age that we live in, it gets easy to try to do them all. And you end up just spreading your energy really thin amongst them all. And so what I've learned to do is if you find something that's functional, just stay with what you know is functional and get better and better at using that one functional tool. And don't worry about whether Claude is better than ChatGPT or ChatGPT is better than Gemini. Like, they're all going to be okay. And the more you learn how to use that one particular tool properly, you're going to get better and better output out of it. So that's the thing. I've been on ChatGPT for over a year.
Yeah.
You're not going to beat me with Claude. Because,
right.
You know what I mean? Like, I wield this tool well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So do you think people read more of the titles or the descriptions when they're taking a class?
Oh, I think it's traditional marketing. Headlines are always what get attention, right? AIDA, attention, interest, detail, action, right? So that headline is always what gets attention first, but then your description is what's going to really deepen people's interest. And so I think like, okay, they're scanning through Hoover or whatever the listing is, and the attention is what grabs them. But if the description isn't there, they're gonna be like, you know? And I think the bigger thing now, what you can tell, I think if you heard Scott's video the other day, HypnoThoughts is really at a point, and a lot of the conferences are, it's not just HypnoThoughts, I've been to the other ones too. This thing of people coming in, and too many people are winging their presentations. They're smart enough with their marketing to make a catchy title and a functional description. And then they're coming in and they're just winging it on their presentation. And then people are like, well, that was a waste of 45 minutes of my time. That's going to start catching up with people because now you don't just have one or two or three conferences a year that, now there's like 14 hypnosis conferences a year now. And if you're presenting at multiple ones and you're committing that sin, you're just amplifying your own brand destruction. You know what I mean? Like, and there are people that are doing it, and I'm not going to name names, but I see it and I hear about it. People need to start being more thoughtful, and they need to focus more on delivering real value within these conference spaces, because the number of people that have gone to them over and over again is at a point where they're more discerning now, and you got to be ready for that. So I think having a thoughtful, well-crafted description, and then making sure that what you deliver when you actually do it is in line, is congruent with the description that you made, is really, really important. You have the opportunity to use this proposal creation process to really help you put your best foot forward for doing a good presentation, right? It's not just about getting accepted to present. It's
100%.
about using the process of creating your proposal to really create clarity that helps you put a better product out there when you do get accepted and you go.
Right.
Yeah.
So Paul, when you're doing, you said that for the objectives, keep it to 3 to 5 learning objectives. Does that hold? So that's what you should do when you're at the presentation, to keep it to the 3 to 5, so you don't.
Yeah. Yeah,
Tend
definitely.
to
Adult
overwhelm.
learning theory says that, there's decades and decades of this. Like adults, once you go beyond the 3 to 5 cognitive units, they don't retain them all. So you can try to do 7 or 8
Too much.
under the well-intended thing of I want to bring a lot of value,
Mhm.
but they're not going to retain them. So their sense of value won't necessarily be there. They'll only remember the 2 or 3 that were most important to them. And so again, that's where if I do 5, it might be because I think, well, all 5 really are important to me. And if you like these 3 but not these 2, and Joe likes these 3 but not these 2, I win both ways. But when you start getting to 6, 7, 8,
Okay.
that's where you're not going to be doing as well as you think. Joe, I see your hand up. How can I help?
Yeah, this year they're doing 20-minute, 1 hour, and 90-minute presentations. Do you have any suggestions on how to craft this for presentations of different lengths?
I would actually say it's exactly the same no matter what. Because again, even if let's go smallest, let's talk. This is a great question, by the way. Thank you so much. Look at it scale wise. If I give a 20-minute presentation, I should still hit 3 key learning objectives in that 20-minute time. What should happen is I should just be ultra efficient with my language. No fluff at all. Like ideally no fluff ever, but especially in that 20-minute. Here's my lead. Here's my learning objective 1, learning objective 2, learning objective 3, and thank you so much, and I'm out. And people are gonna be like, whoa, that was awesome. Not a single wasted minute in 20 minutes. Scale it to an hour, same thing. What you're doing is with the extra 40 minutes, you can run deeper on each learning objective, and you can get into the weeds a little bit more. And then again, you go to 90. Now, your biggest difference when you get toward 90 minutes or 2 hours is your choice of topic in the first place. Like I saw someone on the HypnoThoughts. I'm so glad you asked this question. It's helped me clarify. I saw somebody on HypnoThoughts the other day when Scott put out the video. Someone wrote in the comments, I just couldn't cover my technique in 20 minutes at this year's. So what the person was saying was, I got a 20-minute, but 20 minutes wasn't enough to teach my thing. And the learning point from that should be, then you picked the wrong topic. You need to know your material better than anyone. It's yours, right? And so if you're teaching a protocol or a process, you need to really sit with yourself and ask, can I do that in 20 minutes? And if the answer is no, don't do that one. Shift to another thing that you're like, yeah, I can crush it in 20 minutes, and not people feeling like they don't quite get it because I didn't have enough time to describe it. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Yeah, yeah. That's a big, that's another part of where the people who have been getting away with winging it, they're going to get exposed more and more. You need to have a dry run of your presentation where you literally time yourself. If you're brand new and you've never presented before, it's not the end of the world if you go, well, I'm a first timer, so I know I'm going to get a 20-minute. And I had this thing that I know I'm good at, but I don't know if I can do it in 20 minutes. Go to someone and call me, let's talk about it. I'm happy to help people. But that's your thing, is you got to look and say, there's this thing I'm really passionate about. Can I get it across in 20 minutes because it's my first time? Or no, I can't. So I'm going to be adamant that I need to get a 1 hour. And if the only way I can get my foot in the door and be a presenter is to do the 20-minute, I'm going to, as much as I love that topic, I'm going to put it on the shelf. And I'm going to say, I do have this other thing that I could talk about effectively in 20 minutes. You got to know your material. You got to know your material. Yeah.
So Paul,
Yes, ma'am.
with HypnoThoughts, if you are, I mean, I'm a presenter at other conferences, but it'd be my first time at Hypno. Would I put in only knowing that they're only going to give me a 20-minute?
Yeah.
With
Again,
that
if you go
mindset?
back to Scott's video, he said, look, if you've never presented here before, your first time, it's 20 minutes. That's what
Okay.
you're going to get.
Okay.
So you should go in planning with that understanding.
Got it.
Right. And that's where, again, I would really look at, there are so many, the average TED talk, TEDx talk, the average TEDx talk is between 9 and 12 minutes. So it'd be a good way to coach yourself is get ready and go, oh my gosh, it's an embarrassment of riches. I get 20. But if you could plan it and say, I'm going to plan it like a TEDx talk at first, and I'm allowed to go long, right? Then go on YouTube and just start looking at TEDx talks and look at how they're delivered. There are models to those, or formulas, if you will, that you could, why try to reinvent that wheel? Like, set yourself up with, success sooner and easier by looking at what people have done well. And I'll tell you, my good friend Brian Miller is a TEDx talk coach. And if you search for him on YouTube and look at his content and look at, he's got a lot of people that he's coached. I mean, their stuff, they're killing it. Like, there'd be real solid people to model after, or any of Brian's students, Brian Miller. And for that, again, that 20-minute, just, I want to make sure, I probably said this before, but I'm going to re-say it. Maybe I'll say it a little different. If you know you're going for a first timer slot and you're going for that 20-minute thing, really, that key concept of, what's my idea worth sharing? And then you're really kind of just, you're not even necessarily going to 3 learning objectives, right? It might just be, here's this one concept that I really want you to get because I think it's valuable and it's going to help your practice. It's going to help you get better results. It's going to help you, whatever. But it's this one key concept. What's the idea worth sharing? If you approach it that way, I think you'll do really, really well with a 20-minute talk.
What is your take on creating peripheral material to hand out during the talks? As we're putting together the concept for the talk and the title for the talk, ChatGPT is really kind about providing a whole outline for a talk.
Mm-hmm.
Should we think also in terms of, even before putting in for the topic, to just, create what might be an outline for handouts that we might give out during those talks? Let the teacher answer that for me.
Yeah, no, it's really smart question. So my first answer from a conceptual level is, what's the learning you want to help them synthesize? If you can put your finger on that, if really you just want them to get a core concept and you're going to speak that concept to them and lay it out in a way that once you've done your job as a presenter, they can take that concept away, you're good to go. If you're really trying to put them through a learning process, then some structure which supports the process would probably be helpful. And so that's where you might say, I would like to give them a worksheet, or I would like to give them, I'll tell you, Joe, my thing goes all the way back from being a teacher where I used to write on a chalkboard. To this day, when I present and I work, when I mentor hypnotists or I do trainings, I love still, and this is, I know I'm probably particular in this way, but people don't seem to mind it. I go to Home Office Depot or Office Max or Staples, and I buy those big newsprint pads, but they're like Post-its, they're sticky on the back. And I pull them off and I slap them right on the wall and I give people markers and I have them, they're writing in real time at a lot of my presentations because I really feel like that action of writing helps people synthesize their learning. And so what I'll do is it's really like kind of like handing them a giant worksheet, only there's nothing on the worksheet. I say the question and they write it. I really am a big fan of that. In this digital age that we live in, a lot of people, they don't want that anymore. They don't want to carry a big, huge piece of newsprint out with them, or they don't even want to carry a worksheet out with them. It's a hard thing to gauge. I've done, I've given slide sets away at presentations where I make it all on a slide deck and I just give it to everyone so that afterward they can review the slides and help retain more. I've done Google Forms where they go in and they fill out a Google form to help synthesize their learning. You know, I know that ultimately I'm not giving you a just do this answer, but I think again, what I try to always start with is if I'm going to use something like any of those things, it should not be superfluous. It should be because the act of going through the thing helps them either retain an idea or ideas or helps them work out a better understanding of themselves somehow. If it's not going to do that, don't bother. Don't worry about it.
So the last year, and I'm guessing this year, because we're at the Sahara, it's a Union Hotel. We can't have slide projectors. We probably can do the Post-it notes on the wall, which I have and I love. But they want us to deliver whatever we have in a digital format.
Right.
That you can upload onto your Hoova even tomorrow if you wanted to, or 90 days out, I guess is when it opens up.
Yep. So it's all really available to you still. You just need to think about how you want to deliver it. You could literally hand a worksheet to every single person as they walk into the room that day, or you could put a digital version of the worksheet onto Hoova and let them see it in real time during your presentation and they could jot down on a notepad. You could even nowadays, again, you could make like, is that a word even? Editable PDFs. You can make a PDF that they can actually fill out or a jot form or a Google form. You could send them like a link to that, I would think, through Hoova so that they sit there on their phone and fill it out in real time. You know, there's lots of options. I think, again, don't do any of it just to seem like flashy or cool. Do it because it's going to help you get where you want to get. And it's going to help you get them where you want them to get to. Yeah. And that's where a lot of times I've just found simpler is better. And so a lot of times I just still like to just sit there and have a whiteboard or the old flip thing and be like, all right, let's go. And they're saying stuff and I'm writing it down. And then if you have to at the end, you take a picture with your phone and you can send it to them on Hoova afterward as a picture, or you know what I mean? Like one of my favorite quotes, it's not a question of resources, it's a question of resourcefulness. So let's do this. Let's make it actionable. My email is paul@paulramsey.com, Paul @PaulRam as in Michael, SAY.com. If you would like to get your rough draft of your proposal together and have a pair of eyes on it, which I would say you're kind of crazy if you don't. And I'm saying crazy to be a little more playful because my first thing was to say stupid, but I'm not going to say stupid. Because again, one of the biggest things I've noticed, and I did this just the other day, it was stupid of me. I was like, oh, I could do that. And I cranked out my presentation for HypnoThoughts for next year. I cranked out my proposal. And I'm like, oh, I've done this thing for years. I should have ran it by someone. Almost certainly there's something in there that made total sense to me, but doesn't make as much sense to them when they read the proposal. This year, when I presented at Heartland, my title couldn't be clearer to me in my mind of one of my presentations I did. And I would say 5 people came to that presentation thinking that it was for something else. And And they were still glad that they sat through the presentation once they sat through it. But 3 of them came up to me and said, I totally didn't think that this was what this presentation was about. Your title fooled me. And so if I had just sent it to 3 of my colleagues and been like, hey, when you read this title, what do you think the presentation is going to be about? And made sure that what they said back to me was what my intention was, could have saved myself. Now I lucked out because all the people still found that presentation interesting. They didn't feel like they had been baited and switched. And that's the big thing that tends to happen. They just felt like, oh, I misunderstood, but this presentation was still cool. Well, we'd still rather avoid that if we can, right? So run your titles past people, run your descriptions past people. What do you think? Not does this title make sense to you? Because the title will still make sense. It won't be right still. What do you think this presentation is about based on the title? Ask that question to your people and make sure that what they say back to you is what you intended. And then based on the description, now give them the description. Based on the description, what do you think the value of attending this presentation would be? And make sure that you like what they say back to you as an answer. And if they say, well, I'm not really sure, that's a red flag. Because again, you have the whole vision in your head. You have an unfair advantage. Run it by people and make sure that you've got that there. So, and you're welcome to, again, my point I was trying to make originally before I digressed was you're welcome to send that first version to me and I'll happily look at that stuff. Paul@paulramsey.com. All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
All right.
Paul.